Megyn Kelly, host of The Megyn Kelly Show and journalist, is here with us today reacting to this week's news about the media shakeup going on at CNN and MSNBC. Also, Trump's stunning picks that he has announced in the past few days. We've got all of that and more with her. Also, we will be discussing some of the controversy surrounding his Attorney General pick, Matt Gaetz, as well as our thoughts on Pete Hegseth as the pick for the Secretary of Defense. We've got so much on today's episode of Relatable. It is brought to you by our friends at Crowd Health. Go to crowdhealth.com/Allie. That's crowdhealth.com/Allie. Hey guys, welcome to Relatable. Happy Thursday. Hope everyone has had a wonderful week so far. We've got our girl Megyn Kelly coming up in just a little bit, but we've got to talk about some news first, and then we will get her reaction to the news of this week. I want to talk about Matt Gaetz as Donald Trump's pick as Attorney General. This came as a surprise to a lot of people. He announced this on Wednesday. He is a Florida congressman, and this is what Trump had to say. He said, Matt is a deeply gifted and tenacious attorney trained at the William and Mary College of Law, who has distinguished himself in Congress through his focus on achieving desperately needed reform at the Department of Justice. He goes on to say that Matt will end weaponized government, protect our borders, dismantle criminal organizations, and restore Americans' badly shattered faith and confidence in the Justice Department. He would be a very young attorney general. He's 42. He has been a very loyal supporter of the 45th president. This doesn't come without controversy or a little bit of criticism, even from the right. He is known for being pretty brash. He made this comment at a summit that women protesting for abortion rights were too unattractive to be impregnated. He said, why is it that the women with the least likelihood of getting pregnant are the ones most worried about having abortions? Nobody wants to impregnate you if you look like a thumb. Matt Gaetz said, and I know a lot of people are scandalized by that. I'm much more scandalized that there are people who will protest for the right to kill, poison, and dismember a baby than I am that someone said something offensive about the people who are fighting for a right to kill the baby. And he was asked about this, and he doubled down. Here's that one.
Is it safe to say that based off of your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies are ugly and overweight?
Yes.
What do you say to people who think that those comments are offensive?
Be offended.
Mm-hmm. Now, whether you agree with how he described these women or not, it is, I would say, best practice when you are engaging with a reporter who is not acting in good faith or who is on the other side, not to apologize for something that you are not actually sorry for. That is actually a characteristic that you want to see in a kind of attorney general. He also is kind of known for doing things that catch media attention. For example, during COVID, this was March 4th, 2020, he wore a full-on gas mask into the chamber as he was having conversations with staff. He said reviewing the coronavirus supplemental appropriation and preparing to go vote. So he's obviously kind of making fun of this whole thing, which he was really ahead of the curve on that, because that was like back when we didn't know anything and he was already saying, okay, we're kind of going overboard. You also may remember that Gaetz, along with 7 other Republicans, joined 208 House Democrats to overthrow House Speaker Kevin McCarthy from his position in October 23. So all of these things, the reason that they're relevant is because they are being cited as reasons why he shouldn't be Attorney General, not necessarily because of the content of offensive remarks about abortion, pro-choice protesters, but because some people would say that this is a serious position for a serious person, and they might condemn him as just wanting media attention or kind of pulling these stunts to be disruptive and divisive rather than getting the job done. On the other side of the argument is, while we need someone who is willing to disrupt, we need someone who is unrelenting and unapologetic, who really doesn't care at all what the big government mainstream media narrative is, and is willing to chart his own path. And some people, because he is, I would say, uniquely hated by a lot of people on the left, and what some people would describe as the deep state, would say that this is Trump basically, sorry for the crude term, but giving like a middle finger to the establishment, because he certainly is not an establishment pick. Now, because of his nomination, seemingly because of his nomination, he has resigned from his position as congressman. House Speaker Mike Johnson announced that Gaetz resigned from Congress effective immediately, soon after Trump's shock announcement on Wednesday. His resignation came reportedly before a Friday vote on whether to release a House Ethics Committee report related to allegations of sexual misconduct and drug use involving Gaetz. Gaetz's resignation will end the investigation, as the panel no longer has jurisdiction to pursue the investigation. So, of course, many people are putting things together and surmising that the reason that he resigned wasn't really because he was nominated by Trump as the attorney general, but in order to end this investigation, this ethics committee investigation, once you are no longer in Congress. As I just said, they don't have jurisdiction. They don't have a reason to investigate anymore. Some people are saying he was preempting the findings of this investigation, and even going so far as to conclude that Donald Trump nominated him so he could resign with dignity, so that the results of this ethics committee investigation would not come to light. Now, that is a hypothesis. That is a guess that people are making. We do not know that, but those are the pieces that some people are putting together that has created kind of some controversy around this. Let me go ahead and pause and tell you about our first sponsor for the day. It's EveryLife. EveryLife is the only pro-life diaper company that exists. And I know that sounds crazy. You're thinking, isn't every diaper company pro-life? Shouldn't they be pro-baby? That's kind of their clientele. Unfortunately, a lot of these major diaper companies, even the ones that promote being pro-family and pro-clean ingredients and safety for your baby, they are actually using your dollars to donate to Democrats, to pro-abortion organizations, and you just don't want to be a part of that. But you also don't want to compromise on the quality and effectiveness of your diapers. That's why we use EveryLife. We love EveryLife diapers in our home. They work so well. I love that they don't have any of the fake ingredients. I don't have to worry about any of that, but also that this is a company run by a family that loves the Lord and is trying to save as many lives as possible. They donate a Buy for a Cause bundle through their website that you can purchase to pro-life organizations and pregnancy centers across the country. They also do everything they can to support the families that work for them, and they give as many resources as possible to employees who are having a baby either biologically or through adoption. So I just love EveryLife. Go to everylife.com, use code Allie10. You'll get 10% off your purchase when you do. That's everylife.com, code Allie10. Okay, so this investigation of Matt Gaetz, if you don't know much about this, I didn't really either. I remember when this whole thing started and I heard some details about it, but I really had to dig in to figure out what the details were and what the timeline is. So the Fed started investigating the Florida congressman in the summer of 2020. The FBI executed a search warrant on Gaetz later that year, seizing his cell phone and a cell phone belonging to his ex-girlfriend. The public learned of the existence of this investigation in 2021 when the New York Times reported that prosecutors were investigating whether Gaetz had a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old in 2019 and paid for her to travel with him in violation of federal sex trafficking laws. According to reporter and author Molly Hemingway, the New York Times' anonymously sourced report contained no evidence of sex crimes or official comments from investigators. Hemingway argued that this was really a guilt by association story. At the end of Trump's term in office, Gaetz reportedly sought a preemptive pardon from the president in case he were charged. That pardon was not given. In September 2022, after more than 2 years of investigating Gaetz, prosecutors recommended that no charges be filed filed against the Florida congressman, citing the reliability or lack of reliability of 2 witnesses. So the feds declined to prosecute. You know that if the feds had the evidence that they needed to prosecute, they would have done it. It would have been a shoo-in. So I think that is probably the best argument in his favor, that the feds declined to actually charge him. There's also, though, this House Ethics Committee probe that was going on kind of alongside, but not together with the DOJ investigation. That began in April 2021. It was put on pause while the Justice Department investigated Gaetz in response to their request. Former Speaker Kevin McCarthy claimed that the ouster orchestrated by Gaetz came as a result of McCarthy not ending the ethics investigation. In June of this year, the House Ethics Committee released a public statement saying it would continue its investigation into Gaetz, which included additional allegations beyond sexual misconduct, including misused state ID records, converting campaign funds to personal use, and other charges related to gifts and standards of conduct. And so there is some baggage when it comes to this pick. And if Trump continues with this nomination, which I'm sure he will, because I'm sure he knew all of these allegations and the potential for controversy before he chose Matt Gaetz, we will see if he is actually able to get through the Senate confirmation process. Steve Deace called Gaetz's nomination perhaps the most giant middle finger presidential appointment in American history. A lot of people are saying, look, like this, we need this kind of disruptor. Representative Mike Simpson, a Republican from Ohio, said, oh, I can't say this word, it's a cuss word. Are you S-wording me? He told the Huffington Post. Republican Susan Collins says, I was shocked at the nomination. This is why the Senate's advise and consent process is so important. I'm sure there will be many, many questions raised at Mr. Gaetz's hearing. Also, the New York Post learned from a source that several House GOP members meeting on Capitol Hill burst into uproarious laughter when Gaetz's appointment was announced. Of course, we don't know why. We don't know why they laughed at that, if they thought, wow, this is a giant middle finger to the deep state, or whether they just didn't think it was serious. Vice President-elect J.D. Vance said this, and this is sarcasm, so I'll just go ahead and tell you that from the top. The main issue with Matt Gaetz is that he used his office to prosecute his political opponents and authorized federal agents to harass parents who were peacefully protesting at school board meetings. Oh, wait, that's actually Merrick Garland, the current attorney general. So I think that gives us a peek into what the Trump team is thinking, is that, look, like, we're not going to get more corrupt than the Biden administration and the Obama administration. And so y'all can just cool it. Also, people are bringing up this very good point, like the Babylon Bee and this post on X, that the Biden administration is filled with a lot of freaks and weirdos. Biden administration declares Trump cabinet picks unqualified. And of course, they've got a picture of Mr. Rachel Levine. We've got Pete Buttigieg right there. And then we've got Karine Jean-Pierre, who I think is a very beautiful woman. I do not know what was going on this day. I'm still very confused about this. And then we've got this freakazoid, and I think I can say that kindly. What was his name? Sam Britton. Sam Britton, and we even have luggage tags with his face on them, because you remember he's not only teaches like BDSM sex shops at colleges, he's also a cross-dresser, and he's a klepto. Like, he was stealing women's luggage at the turnstiles at the airport. That's what they're called, right? And so he's a giant weirdo. So this was the Biden administration. So the fact that people are clutching their pearls now and freaking out about this, that's the hypocrisy that is kind of being highlighted. Kyle Mann, editor-in-chief of the Babylon Bee, said, smart of Trump to pick Matt Gaetz. Everyone's expectations for a second term were getting unrealistically high, so it was important to bring them back down to earth. You can take that as you will. Matt Walsh said, wow, incredible, great pick. Trump is really serious about draining the swamp this time. And so mixed reactions from people. Molly Hemingway said the DOJ and FBI tried to frame Matt Gaetz. So this is her response, which I really trust Molly Hemingway. Tried to frame Matt Gaetz in one of the worst ways possible for a man. Imagine what he would do to hold these awful, corrupt people to account. So I think that is the best argument in Matt Gaetz's favor. If you believe that he was framed and that this was all just a setup to hold him back, keep him down, get him out of politics, that he will have rightful, righteous retribution to try to cut as much corruption as humanly possible as Attorney General. So that's one pick that people were really surprised by, mixed reactions to. And then there was Pete Hegseth. And he is a co-host of Fox and Friends on Fox News. We've had him on our show. He is a brilliant writer and amazing advocate of classical education. Of course, I'm 100% on board with that. He's written amazing books about classical education, the roots of classical education. I loved the conversation that I had with him a couple years ago. Like, I knew that he was brilliant, but I had no idea because I just didn't know that we shared so much in common when it comes to our theology and our philosophy about education and all of that. And that book did extraordinarily well. And I'm very thankful for that because more people need to know about classical education and classical conversations. He is also a veteran himself and has done a lot with our military and veterans, just raising resources and raising awareness for the need for resources for our vets. And he is being tapped to serve as Secretary of Defense. And he has this amazing clip from the Sean Ryan show where he talks about the problem of progressivism in our military. Here's SOT 6.
There's a chance to course correct it, but it would take the new Trump administration going after it really hard.
How would they correct it?
Well, first of all, you got to fire, you got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. I mean, obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever that was involved in any of the DEI woke, it's got to go. Either you're in for war fighting, and that's it. And that's the only litmus test we care about. You got to get DEI and CRT out of military academies, so you're not training young officers to be baptized in this type of thinking. And then, whatever the standards, whatever the combat standards were, say, in, 1995, let's just make those the standards. And as far as recruiting, to hire the guy that, did Top Gun Maverick and create some real ads that motivate people to want to serve. I know there were mistakes made on our tours all over the place. Mm-hmm. But I, at least for the most part, had a sense that my senior leaders were committed to the completion of the mission for the right reasons. And maybe there were strategic differences and all that other stuff. And it wasn't always perfect, but that trust is broken. And you have to reestablish that trust by putting in no-nonsense warfighters in those positions who aren't going to cater to the socially correct garbage.
I think he'll be a great Secretary of Defense. People were shocked by this just because, he is a TV host, and I don't think that he was even considered by a lot of outside people to be on the short list. Right now we've got Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, and the only thing I can think of is this picture of him from 2021 wearing not only this mask, but also like this visor. Really? This just doesn't depict a whole lot of courage for me. Doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. And of course, he has regurgitated all of the progressive talking points when it comes to LGBTQ stuff and race. And so I think that Pete Hegseth will be a great Secretary of Defense. All right, we are going to get Megyn Kelly's reaction to not only this, but her response to some media news, the shakeup, layoffs happening at CNN, MSNBC apparently being sold. And we're also going to talk about some personal stuff with her. Like, how did she go from this very publicly contentious relationship with Donald Trump to then supporting him publicly speaking at one of his rallies? We didn't get her reaction to Matt Gaetz's nomination. Actually, that announcement happened after we recorded this episode, but she will talk about Pete Hegseth and some of the other people that were picked by Donald Trump. Such a good conversation. Let me pause first and tell you about our next sponsor, though, and that is That is Samaritan's Purse, Operation Christmas Child. If you grew up in the church, in the evangelical church, the way that I did, and maybe in the Catholic church too, I'm not sure, you have built one of these amazing boxes from Operation Christmas Child, and I've actually got to pick it up so I can show you how cute it is. They've looked the same for as long as I can remember. I think I've been making these little boxes from Operation Christmas Child since I was in kindergarten. The churches that I attended growing up always made a really big deal of this. It's such a fun way to teach your kids generosity and truly share the joy of God's love, the joy of the gospel with children around the world. What you do is you get one of these boxes, and there's lots of places to get it. You can also just get like a plastic shoebox or any shoebox from anywhere, and you fill it with different items for kids. And so you could put a little doll in there. You could put a comb, a toothbrush, socks, a journal, pen, crayons, things like that. And this really is such a game changer for them to just give them a beautiful way to see the generosity of Christians and how much God loves them. All you have to do is go to SamaritansPurse.org/OCC. You'll find all the directions for what to put in the box and where to drop it off. There are thousands of drop-off locations, so there's definitely one near you. And then Samaritan's Purse comes around, picks up the boxes, and distributes them to children around the world for the rest of the year. So go check that out. Go to SamaritansPurse.org/OCC. Megyn, thanks so much for joining. I really appreciate it. Gosh, you've been so busy, even busier than usual, it seems like, over the past couple of weeks.
Oh, but like joyously busy, right? The past week has just been so glorious. It's a pleasure to come to work.
Oh, yes. I've heard the joy in your voice. It's contagious over the past couple of weeks or so.
I don't remember ever feeling this way about an election, to be honest. I'm usually more like, whatever. Not much is going to change depending on who wins. Yeah. I just feel so differently this time around.
Yes, gosh, it's a huge relief. I feel the same way. And actually, every Trump supporter that I talked to the day of, obviously we had no idea how it was going to go, but there was this sense of contagious peace and joy among all of us. We all felt, even before the vote started coming in, that okay, I think we have this. Like, I don't want to say it out loud, but I think we have this. Did you feel that way?
I went a different way because I like to prepare myself for the worst possible outcomes and like get okay with it. The last thing I wanted was to be one of those blubbering fools on the air, you know, if bad news came in. So I was like, she's probably going to win. She's got this ground game. I'm just going to accept that could happen and maintain my dignity so I can handle the results like a pro. And then, you know, when it started unfolding that night, it was like, oh my God, it's real. I can let go of that nonsense and celebrate.
Yeah, man, speaking of blubbering fools, I know that you've seen these videos going around of these women who set up their tripod and set up their phone, put it on their dashboard, whatever, just to cry and scream into the camera. I see that and I'm like, gosh, I'm so glad that they did not get the political representation that they need. And now they're vowing like not to have sex, not to have kids, not to get married, to forfeit all of those things. Do you think that they are serious about their commitment to chastity?
Sadly, no, because I think it's a great idea in their case. I don't think they should reproduce. We don't need further generations of that weakness and hot messiness. And I don't think they're really going to have much opportunity, though. Back on the good side of the ledger, I don't get the impression from most of these videos that these ladies are beating them off with a stick. I just don't think.
I know,
that's why they feel comfortable shaving their hair. It's like, no real difference. It was 6 one way, half a dozen.
Yeah, it's just kind of performative.
No, you can take it to the bank. It's like, I don't know what it is about conservatives, but you can, like, by and large, it's a very attractive group. They tend to be people who have their lives together, who like care about grooming, who care about presentation. And when somebody comes up to me on the college campus to say, and before I know if they're going to say I'm a fan or I don't like you. If it's an attractive woman, you can take it to the bank that it's going to be a conservative. So these leftist women who somehow think it's a middle finger to the man to lean into unattractiveness are really only hurting themselves, and really, hooking up and getting pregnant is probably the last thing they need to worry about. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues. There's some deep issues, much deeper than Donald Trump, I think.
Yeah.
Speaking of kind of like putting emotions to the side, I do think politically one side seems to be better at doing that than the other side. As much as we hear that, oh, MAGA just wants power, Republicans just want more power, we actually don't worship our politicians, and we are able to separate how we feel and even our personal lives from what we think about politics. Even though those things do overlap, we kind of understand the proper ordering of things. And I was thinking about this a lot as I heard you announce that you were going to be speaking at Donald Trump's rally. I was so pumped for you, so excited. That was exactly what was needed. But of course, I think back to 8 years ago when you and Trump had that infamously heated exchange on the debate stage. You asked him about some of his previous comments about women. He goes on the Don Lemon show, basically says that you were on your period when you asked that question. And like, that was very contentious. You have come a long way, both of you, in the past 8 years. And I'm just wondering, like, what was that like behind the scenes for you personally, going from that contentious exchange to then rallying for Donald Trump?
I mean, it's been quite a long, strange trip.
Yeah.
That when I asked that question back in 15, I liked Trump. I didn't have a problem with Trump. He and I had always gotten along. He had been all over me in the week prior. He was upset about a segment I had done, and he was getting nasty. That's not why I drafted that question. That question had been in the bank for months, but I knew it probably wasn't going to go over well, because he was already mad at me, and I knew it was a hard question. And so then he attacked me, which was fine. I'm in the arena, I'm fair game. But then it just went on for so long, and it got so personal. And then the threats in my life went up that I really came to dislike the man. I was
Yeah.
not his fan.
Yeah.
And then he started to govern. Then he won and he started to govern. And we had settled our differences. I went to see him at Trump Tower. We made up. And then I gave him a congratulatory call when he won. So we were technically fine on paper, but there still wasn't any love lost between us. Then he started to govern, Allie Beth. And I was like, oh, I love that. Oh, I like that too. Well, this is great. Oh, look what's happening here. Oh, and this. And then the final thing for me was the Brett Kavanaugh nomination. And it was just so grossly unfair that what was being done to him. I was doing battle with left-wing reporters and pundits on NBC every morning. I couldn't believe the lies they were telling. And it was very contentious, and I was very defensive of Kavanaugh. And I just couldn't believe Trump stuck by him. Like, the nerves of steel that took. Any other president would have abandoned that guy and said, this is not worth it for me.
Yeah.
I got a lot of great judges I can elevate. He stood by him. And it was like a before and after moment for me on Trump. It was like, I get it. All that stuff that I found very annoying, his willingness to fight, until he feels that he's emerged the victor, which when you're on the receiving end of it is not that great. But when he's fighting for you is amazing. It's what differentiates Trump from virtually every other politician is what was needed for Brett Kavanaugh. It's the reason conservatives got that seat on the Supreme Court. And he didn't have to go with somebody else. And since then, it's only been getting rosier and rosier. And then, during his 4 years out of power, the lawfare against him, the assassination attempt and how he handled it, I just see one of the strongest people I've ever laid eyes on when I see Trump now. And I'm 100% rooting for him.
Yeah. Gosh, the Kavanaugh thing, that was a moment for me that I kind of felt radicalized. I think that my own skin got a lot thicker during that time as I was watching the unfair attacks on Kavanaugh, and Kamala Harris too, maybe the most vicious of them all when it comes to those hearings. Yeah. And honestly, I hadn't really thought about it from the perspective of Trump's strength. But you're right. I think a lot of guys would have seen, okay, it is way more politically advantageous for me to just abandon this guy. I mean, who cares? It's just a guy. I can get someone else nominated. But he didn't. He stuck by him. And you're right. That is a trait that we have seen over and over again. And I just wonder if that's really what did it for him during the campaign. I was worried after Kamala Harris got in. I felt like their footing was just off. They couldn't land a good attack on her right after she entered the race. And yeah, I guess I just didn't see it at the time because it was obviously an absolute spanking. And I'm wondering from your perspective, and you probably are around more center-left people, even liberal people than I am, did you get the sense from the people around you that they were kind of on the same trajectory that you were, seeing his strength, seeing his fortitude, seeing her craziness, and that he was going to be the one to ultimately prevail against her?
I don't know. I think Trump didn't win, any of the leftists I know over with how he handled Kamala or even with the assassination attempt. I think he won a lot of them over because of the DEI explosion over the past couple of years. Like my friends in New York who are what we used to consider normal Democrats, they're not really woke. They're kind of open-minded, like, okay, I'll self-flagellate if I need to because I'm a white woman. I guess I'll do a little of that, but not really on board. I'm kind of open-minded, but that's where most of my leftist New York friends are. But then when they saw what happened after, 10/7 and with the kids in COVID and the lockdowns and being called white supremacists if they wanted their children in school, it was just a slow boil for a lot of them where they started to say, I don't recognize myself in this Democratic Party at all. And then, Trump gave them just enough for them to say, okay, I'll do it. I think it started off for a lot of them because I do know a lot who wound up ultimately voting Trump. It was initially hold the nose and do it. And then I think by the time we actually got here with all that they threw at him, the lawfare and the assassination and the fight, where they were like, you know what? And the girls in sports thing, they went in there and much more proudly pulled the lever for him. So I just think the Democrats misread what matters to women and what matters in particular, including to Democrat women. Like many Democrat women are not woke and they're not as annoying as their spokespeople are. And those are some of my friends. So I did see some of them migrating.
Yeah, it was interesting, the calculation they made. Obviously, she thought abortion was going to win it for her. That's what she focused on in every single speech, every single rally, so-called reproductive rights. That's when she got most animated because that's her calling card. And obviously, that just didn't do it for her. And I honestly thought maybe that will work. Maybe I'm misreading things. And that is what most people care about, the conflation of miscarriage and abortion, all of that. But what you see and what you're feeling is that even women who might call themselves liberal, when they're thinking women's rights, they're really thinking about the right to privacy and to fairness. Is that accurate?
You know what it came down to, Allie Beth, and I said this, to me, it was the most important thing I said at that Trump rally the night before the vote. It was the one thing I really wanted to say. And that was that the left thinks that women are so obsessed with ending the lives that grow in their wombs, they forget that most of us are much more focused on protecting the lives that are already here. That's how most of us spend our days thinking. What's happening with my children and how do I protect them and how do I foster a good life for them and myself, right? I want to keep myself safe too, so I can stick around and see and have my own experiences and also protect my children. And so it's not that abortion is not an issue for people who might be on the fence about Trump and Kamala. There are a lot of pro-choice women, including in the Republican Party, who don't love what happened after Dobbs, but they have a lot of other issues that also drive them. And their own children's safety and well-being is at the top of the list. So this is one of the reasons why I said what I said that night. I raised the issues that are deeply important to me because I know these resonate with people across the aisle too, like Laken Riley, killed at 22 years old by an illegal from Venezuela while she was just trying to go to nursing college. Like Peyton McNabb, a sophomore in high school who's minding her own business playing volleyball and gets permanent paralysis and brain damage from a boy posing as a girl. It is not nice. They don't have to be polite to the point where they accept brain damage to play this leftist game, and then the demonization of our boys is another piece of it, because I think most moms out there, even on the left, are sick and tired of being told that their boys are second-class citizens or can't get jobs just because they're boys. It's like this leftist ideology has gotten us into a very dark place. And I just wanted to remind them, for people for whom abortion is not the be-all, end-all, which I knew was the majority of people, that there are a lot of really good reasons, no matter how you feel about Trump the man and the tweets or whatever, to vote for Trump, because he actually will protect a lot of the things we care most deeply about.
And at least to vote against Kamala Harris, because I know a lot of people that were simply voting against Kamala Harris. And there were a lot of good reasons to do that. I think Title IX would have been her highest priority on the first day, just like it was Biden's highest priority to make sure that men could be in women's sports. And like, that's just the bridge too far for a lot of people. They can get on board with some other, tenets of progressivism that I can't get on board with. That's just the bridge too far. Quick pause from that conversation. Let me tell you about My Patriot Supply. We just don't know what's going to happen. Unfortunately, a lot of our friends in Florida and North Carolina, they had to deal with the aftermath of disaster. And it is one of the best things we can do for our families to make sure that we have emergency food supply on the ready. My Patriot Supply creates these amazing emergency food kits that are filled with delicious, calorie-dense foods that you need in times of emergency. They're good in storage for up to 25 years, so hopefully you'll never need them, but if you do, it's so much better to be safe than sorry. So get your 3-month emergency food kit, one for every member of your family. That's what you need from My Patriot Supply. Go to preparewithallie.com to get your 3-month emergency food kits for your family. Preparewithallie.com. I'm curious on your take on the future of the media. I heard you on election night. I was sitting next to Glenn Beck as he was talking to you, and he kind of thinks, okay, this is the end of mainstream media. Obviously, not going to trust them anymore. They just don't carry the credit and the reliability that they think they do. But you kind of disagreed with that. You said, they're excited about Trump because now they have a lot to talk about. They can stoke fear more than ever. Now we know that CNN is laying off a bunch of people apparently, and MSNBC is possibly being sold. And so what's your take on their future?
Yeah, I think they should be on their knees thanking God that Trump won because their business model is failing and they can't stay in business much longer unless they improve their ratings. And Trump is a ratings machine. Look at him now with all, he doesn't have to be announcing the cabinet this soon. He's doing because he likes driving the news cycle.
True.
He likes to be in the news. It's his oxygen, this kind of attention. And it's their oxygen too. So in a way, it's a perfect marriage. It's very symbiotic. He loves to be covered and they love to cover him negatively and falsely with lies, but they love to cover him. So he was a lifeline for them, at least for the next 4 years, which they very much needed. I don't think they're going to close up shop in that time, but they're going to continue to shed viewers. I think they're CNN at least made a run at trying to go more middle of the road.
Yeah.
When they brought in Chris Licht, and that failed. The audience was like, we're all leftists now. We have no interest in being fair and balanced.
Yeah,
and instead of adding more viewers on the right, they fired Chris Licht. So then they just leaned into their leftism and placed a few conservatives like Scott Jennings on the air. So in the panoply of 10 commentators, you have one who says conservative things or who says defensive things of Trump. And that's the new business model for them. So they're MSNBC light because MSNBC doesn't even have a conservative doing any of the coverage. So I think they'll do okay over the next 4 years because of Trump, because he drives, the opposition who will be watching MSNBC, and CNN is almost dead. So any sort of a lifeline with the paddles, that's what Trump just did to them, will be appreciated, but then it will fade. It will fade because the business model it doesn't work.
Something that I noticed is that Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon, these are people whose shows, I don't follow them, but I see their content every now and then on my timeline. And I will say they've become a lot more interesting since they left CNN. It actually seems like, I don't know if this is genuine or not, and I guess that's my question, that they're more open to the conservative side. I actually saw Chris Cuomo give a very good description of why people vote for Donald Trump, that they're hiring a guy to do a dirty job and they don't really care about his, moral mistakes and things like that. Do you think that people like that who leave CNN and then all of a sudden become more fair and balanced, was it CNN that was influencing them and they were just kind of lying because they had to at the time? Or do you think that they are lying now just to try to get a bigger audience?
The latter, 100%. It's the latter. I mean, Don Lemon hasn't really changed his views at all. He's out there saying that Kamala lost because of racism and misogyny and that the country is a racist country. We just ran the soundbite the other day. I mean, he said it on camera. That's how he covered election night, that we have to be honest. It's a racist, misogynist country. He's the same old Don Lemon.
Okay.
Elon Musk resurrected his career by giving him an opportunity to come over to X and said, welcome, cut a deal with him. Within 24 hours, he blew it by being his leftist self and now is suing Elon, which is the latest in a slew of lawsuits, I am told, Don Lemon has brought against employers. So he's the same old person he's ever been. Chris Cuomo is faking it because he wants an audience. Go back and look at any night on the Chris Cuomo show when it was on CNN. He's as left as they come. He comes from a party and a family of leftists. They're all leftists. Only now do his brother and Chris come out and try to flirt with the right because they both have careers that are in tatters. Chris Cuomo has about 4 viewers who watch him over on News Nation. And he's trying to increase his numbers because News Nation is trying to be palatable to both the left and the right. But trust me when I tell you, this guy can't stand Trump and he can't stand Trump supporters. And I don't care who he says he voted for or how he says he understands Trump supporters. I'll give you one reaction. When I went out and made my speech at the Trump rally, he mocked it. He mocked me for saying that I believe Trump would protect me and American women. So why would you do that? Anybody who actually supports Trump agreed with every word I said, agreed that Trump is the person to vote for if you want the protection of your children. Why would he do that? Because he's bitter and he's sad and he's tired of me attacking him, which isn't going to stop here or anywhere else.
He's jealous. Yes.
He's a little jealous.
He is. Oh, he's 100% jealous. Okay. Can you give me a prediction until Donald Trump actually takes office and is inaugurated? You mentioned he's announcing all of these picks, which I think is awesome. But of course, it's got some liberals upset. Do you really think like someone like Letitia, whoever in New York, and all of these people who say that they're going to stop Trump, are any of those attempts going to go anywhere? Or can Americans be confident that he is going to take office and clean up the way that he says that he's going to?
Yeah, I have no doubt that no lawfare will stop Trump from taking office. I mean, I worry about the man's safety still, very much so, but I don't think lawfare is going to stand between Trump and his oath of office on January 20th, which is thrilling, right? You see these pics, Allie Beth, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Elon Musk, the richest and maybe smartest man in the world,
amazing,
and certainly most accomplished, is volunteering to help us out for free. He just said, I'll come work for you. Would you like me to work for you, Allie Beth? How about you, MK? Yes. Yeah. Yes, I would. I would like that. Please do.
Yeah.
And so he's going to go in there with Vivek. I imagine Vivek will be more of the workhorse between the two and Elon will have the ideas, but we'll see. And try to shed some of the fat that is all over our bureaucracy and, find efficiencies like the best corporate raiders sometimes do when they buy a company or consider doing so. That's brilliant. Tom Hogan down at the border, along with Stephen Miller, who is the one who came up with the policies like Remain in Mexico, that was so efficient at cleaning things up. We are so lucky that these people are willing to serve. Government jobs don't pay well at all.
Yeah.
They're not glamorous. You're in some crappy windowless office. There's tons of red tape and hierarchies and not that many, views of the outside world. This is great that these people are willing to do it. Same for everybody up and down his roster. The only one I have any problem with is Kristi Noem because she's a puppy killer. And I did not want to see her resurrected.
I was kind of surprised by that. I had no idea that she was on the short list for anything. That is a huge job. Obviously, I hope she does well. I saw that Stephen Miller, he has like 3 jobs, which is interesting. I'm sure he'll do great on all of them. Pete Hegseth.
He'll get it done.
He totally will. Pete Hegseth, I think, was a surprise for a lot of people, but I've only seen excitement and positivity from our side. So,
I think Pete Hegseth will do great. He's got I love Pete and I defended him on the show today, but he has like a personal history that's a little less than pristine when it comes to the marriages and like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't see that killing you in today's day and age. Like 15 years ago, you couldn't get confirmed if you had that.
Yeah.
We were much more careful about finding people who only had these perfect resumes personally and professionally. Wasn't it Bernie Kerik who wasn't confirmed as DHS secretary because he had like one illegal working for him for some period of time. It was like one short stint. I just don't even think that would ruin your chances today. I feel like
No.
we've gotten laxer
Yeah.
in a way that's probably good. So
Yeah.
we don't miss out on people who may have, well, whatever difficulty in their relationships, but
Yeah.
could be great in these roles. And I
Well,
think
because
Pete
it
will
doesn't
sail
matter.
through.
And I
I
think
hope.
Kavanaugh showed us that you can have a pristine past and they're still going to say that they found something from 30 years ago.
Right.
I think that kind of radicalized and strengthened a lot of people. I'm excited about what's going to happen at the border. I think that's going to be really good for the country. And you're right. These are people who just love America. And so I'm hopeful too. Praise God. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Megyn. And thank you for the part that you
Yes.
played in all of this. It was a huge role that you played, and I'm just thankful for it. So go
Oh,
America.
back at you. Oh, back at you, Allie Beth. It's a pleasure. I mean, we have nothing but blue skies ahead.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Megyn.
Lots of love.
All right. Hope you loved that conversation. I know I did. Before we get to our last segment, just want to tell you about our next sponsor, and that is Patriot Mobile. Patriot Mobile is the Christian conservative wireless provider. If you're tired of giving your money to those big progressive wireless provider companies, then you need to make your switch to Patriot Mobile. They are on the front lines fighting for the First and Second Amendments, the sanctity of life. Our military and first responder heroes take a stand for conservative causes. Put America first by switching to Patriot Mobile. They back their service with a coverage guarantee, so you're not compromising at all. They have a 100% U.S.-based customer service team that will find the best plan for your needs. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Go to patriotmobile.com/Allie or call 972-PATRIOT. Right now, get a free month when you use the offer code Allie. Go to patriotmobile.com/Allie. Okay, so a ridiculous thing is happening on TikTok. Surprise, surprise. And I would get Bree's take on this, but she's a little under the weather. So I'm not going to make her get on camera and use her voice here. But this is Make Aqua Tofana Great Again. Aqua Tofana Great Again, okay? So this is the trend that's happening on TikTok. You heard us refer just briefly, Megyn and I, about the liberal foolishness that is happening. Well, this is like peak foolishness and depravity. The women who did not vote for Trump are not okay. There are actually some studies that show that liberal white women have the worst mental health and are on the highest number of prescriptions for different kinds of psychiatric disorders, and that is actually on the rise. And it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, I think there are a lot of reasons for that. I think like marital status is a reason for that. I think their life choices are a reason for that. It's kind of like a chicken or the egg type thing that, you know, you could analyze. I think a lot of them are sitting at home alone, fantasizing about being a part of a Margaret Atwood novel and are watching MSNBC all day, and they just become extremely bitter, and they fantasize about things like this that I'm about to explain to you. So the MAGA movement, the Make Aqua Tofana Great Again movement, gained popularity on TikTok following Trump's election win. Women who were frustrated began posting murder fantasy videos in which they romanticized lacing men's beverages with deadly poison as a justifiable response to fears about abortion rights under a second Donald Trump presidency. They've been viewed millions of times on X or TikTok. They feature young women fiendishly grinning as they mix a cup of tea or other drink with an unknown substance. So Aqua Tofana is a historical poison that was first used apparently in the 1600s by Julia Tofana, who reportedly used it to help women escape abusive marriages by killing husbands with a deadly poison containing arsenic, lead, and belladonna. Are you guys okay? Your husband he just voted for the guy who just won the popular vote and like most electoral votes. You know, like he didn't want to vote for the progressive, maniacally pro-abortion, pro-gender transition and children, pro-open borders candidate. And you think that justifies you poisoning him and murdering him? Okay, here's an example of this. This is a woman threatening to poison her husband. Sat 2. Okay, so if you were just listening to this, the text on there said, like, quote, "Your body, my choice." And that is actually in response to like a massive troll that's happening by some men on X, on social media, after Donald Trump won, saying, "Your body, my choice," which is dumb. And so she's saying that she's gonna kill someone because of that. Here is a woman telling other women to divorce their husbands immediately or to kill them. Saw 3.
Women who can divorce their husbands, I'm gonna need you to do it today. And who can't divorce their husbands, look up Aqua Tofana. I didn't say to do anything with it. I just said to look it up. BB is appalled at y'all. Y'all really did this?
That is so awful and so demonic. I mean, it's demonic what Kamala Harris stood for, but then to say that someone who didn't vote for that demonic agenda needs to be murdered, like, it's so obvious, like, where Satan has an end and where he has a hold. This is the party of death and destruction and divorce and division. Of course, that's not to say that people on the right don't get divorces, but to glorify something like this. And if you point out, well, Donald Trump has had a divorce and he's having multiple marriages, yeah, I call that irony. I call it irony that the guy who actually has a personally sordid history is actually heading up the movement against the just exclusively demonic and depraved agenda of the current Democratic Party and progressive activism. There's a woman looking up a poison recipe in case that girl whose husband gave her an egg apron for her birthday needs it, referencing Hannah Nealman of Ballerina Farms. Here's Top 5. Okay, so liberals have this like weird fantasy that there is this coalition of women, of Black and brown people, also like randomly disabled people are thrown into here, LGBTQ people, polycule people, all of these like people forming a coalition against the cis white straight male patriarchy, and that we are all secretly on each other's side. And even the results of the election can't dissipate that strange idea that they have, because it's not real. That's why we have the majority of Latino men voting for Donald Trump. That's why we have a larger share of Black men voting for Donald Trump. We even have 43% of Latino women voting for Donald Trump, which is a large share. That's why we still had the majority of white women voting for Donald Trump, and we still had a really good share of women in general voting for Donald Trump. And so this intersectionality, like, it's centered coalition team that they have in their heads, like John Lennon's Imagine coming to life, it's just not real. It's just not real. Identity politics, I think, is crumbling. People care more about policy. They care more about their pocketbooks. They care more about their ability to protect their daughter's privacy and their safety. They care more about these things than the so-called right to kill a child in the womb. They care more about these things than having the first woman president or the first Black Indian woman president. Like, they care more about things that actually affect their lives, affect their children, affect their safety, affect their ability to thrive, than they care about all of these very unrealistic, intangible things that progressives want them to care about, including the idea that climate change is going to sink the United States in 12 years. And so I think that's what you've got. You've got a party that is addressing the tangible, real needs and pain points of Americans, and one that is trying to convince people that they have pain points that don't really exist and that they have the solutions to those imaginary pain points. And that's a tough sell. We live in the real world. And so pray for these people. You guys have been so sweet to send me so much encouragement this week, because after Sophia Bush, she just lost it. She lost her cool as we were debating publicly on Instagram about abortion. And of course, I got tons of messages, expletive-laden messages from people like this in my DM saying that I have no idea what I'm talking about and calling me all kinds of names. And you have to pray for those people, because we were all lost at one point. Maybe we weren't all exactly like that, but we were all deluded in our minds in some way. And these women on TikTok, extremely deluded, extremely lost, extremely lonely, extremely deceived. And we just got to pray for these people. All right. We'll be back here on Monday with a really special, important episode with Justin Haskins that I know y'all are going to love. Just mind blowing. See you guys back here then.